All right, we're back, and it's COMP305, Game Programming 1, and it's week 8, lesson 8, part 2 of our broadcast. I've also uploaded recently all of our files that I recorded. So I've got the recording piece plus the broadcast piece now. There's some duplication, but if you wanted to watch the better quality piece, I try and put it up a couple weeks later, right? So if you want to, I've recorded one you can watch live. This is the ones I do now, and the broadcast I do live, and the recorded ones we do later. One of the questions I had from the people that I was broadcasting to is, hey, when are we going to talk about the exam? I can tell you that section 1, which is this section that I'm in right now, did a lot better on the exam than section 2. Section 2 there's a lot of people who had trouble on the Star Wars piece. The people who did the tank game, which is section 1, they had a lot, they were able to get through that piece. The other piece with that uses Star Wars assets, that tripped people up. People forgot about things like how to use a rigid body 2D, do collisions, all that kind of stuff. There were some people that came very close to having a problem, but again, at the end of the day, I'm going to give everybody part marks. It's not like you're going to get 0 for anything, so you're going to do fairly well. Let's go into FPS, this next part of this demo. So I'm pumping up Unity here, and again, I've uploaded my stuff up to GitHub. So the one I kind of put this basic project together, Centennial College FPS demo section 1. That's the one we're doing right now, sec 1. And I want to bring this stuff in from Blender. How do I do that? From last week, what we did was, here's what our level looks like right now, and there's going to be problems, and I'll show you the problems in a second. So let us bring in that stuff. So I've got my objects here. Here it is here right now. I've got my Maze 2 folder, which is where I have my latest stuff. I've got my brick old rounded textures and my gravel texture, and I've got Maze 2, which is the blend file we're just using. I'm going to drag and drop that Maze 2 blend files into the models folder here, like this. Watch. And there we go. And I probably put it in the wrong one, but that's okay. Here's models. Hey, look what it did for me. Here's my Maze 2. It's kind of got it over here, right? And I've got some materials. Let's take a look at my materials, and there's nothing. Oh, wait. There's some materials, but wait, where's my textures? And there are no textures. See, even though I wanted to try and drag and drop across, and I said that you can embed them, there's no textures, so I'm going to drag those in, and that's why I have them here. So take these 2 textures, and I'm going to drag them into my textures folder. There we go. After it converts, Unity has a nice way of putting them in. Let's change the name of these things so they're more friendly. So I'm going to change the name of this texture. So instead of brick old rounded 0087, I'm going to change it to brick old rounded. Take a second to update. And the same thing goes for gravel cobble. Gravel cobble, I'm going to change that to just gravel cobble instead of gravel cobble 0017. There we go. So a couple of my textures. And here's my materials. And if you notice, there's brick old rounded. Let's rename that thing brick old rounded instead of 0087 to just brick old rounded. That's my material. And there's gravel gravel cobble. Rename that thing gravel cobble. Material and textures have the same name. Okay, here's my model. And if you notice, my model has a couple things here. My plane, that's what it is, which is maze, and my I've got some other things in here. My default take, which is a little bit of animation, which I didn't bring across. There's nothing there. And over on the material side, if you notice, here's my material. I'm looking at gravel cobble or brick old rounded. I want to make this material, both the materials, actually, I'm going to click both of them. I want to change them from standard shaders into standard with specular setup. All right, that's the first thing. Which means I get this specular channel here right now, which I didn't have before. So standard with specular setup, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to just only click the gravel cobble. I want to go into my textures folder, and I want to click on the little lock on the top here, right? So it kind of sets up this gravel cobble so it doesn't move. And I want to drag and drop my gravel cobble texture into my albedo. The albedo, this little box here. Take a look. Here's a little box. You see it? And let go. And there's my little box. Okay. And that's gravel cobble. This is cool. Well, you know what I would love to do is use the same thing we used, this normal map. I want to bring this into the normal map area. But I can't bring the same one in because that means it wouldn't work properly. We'd have to convert this whole texture into a normal. So what am I going to do? I'm going to copy this texture from brick old rounded, right? I'm going to kind of duplicate by pressing Control or Command D. It's going to take a second. And I'm going to rename the second one to brick old rounded as a naming convention _N for normal, right? And what it's going to do, it's going to build our normal map for us. So we've already tested it in Blender. I'm going to take this new one, I'm going to drag it across to the normal map now, and it's going to say, hey, now that you grab this normal map, do you want to fix it and make it into our normal map? And I say, yes, I do. And when I do that, it turns into this purple color, right? Which means now it's a normal map. And I want to turn this down because my normal is too high. It's like 1, which is like totally huge, right? And I want to pull this down to 0.15 like I had before. And I'm going to change my smoothness of my specularity down to 0.3. So less specular than we had before. All right, so this is my normal map for my gravel cobble, right? And did I do the wrong one? I did the wrong one. But that's okay, because we can just go like this and kind of choose another one. Let me fix that. So I went to, I grabbed brick old rounded and I put it on gravel cobble, but that's okay, we're gonna change it back. Let's do that again. So I'm gonna kind of Command or Control D for my gravel cobble and make another texture. So I'm just copying it and pressing _N for normal. And now I'm gonna do this other way. So I'm gonna take the gravel cobble, put this into my albedo. There we go, gravel cobble. And I'm gonna trace my gravel cobble normal map and put it in here. I'm gonna fix it, which is gonna convert it to a normal. There we go, that's better. And we've got the same settings. Okay, cool. So that's my gravel cobble material. All right, there we go. I'm gonna undo that one. And then grab my other materials. I'm gonna go to material, I'm gonna go to my brick old rounded and do the same thing, just lock it up. And then I'm gonna go back to my textures and I'm gonna take my brick old rounded, put it into my albedo, there we go. And I'm gonna take my brick old rounded normal map that I've created now inside Unity and drag and drop that and change my values to 0.3, which I tested in Blender, and approximately 0.15, which is my normal that I've tested here. Okay, cool. So I've got my maps going on. And you know what? I've got my materials here. I don't want my materials there and under the models. I want them in their own materials folder. So I'm going to drag and drop these two materials into my materials folder. There we go. So I've got my two materials. And here I've got my model. And I'm going to just get rid of this underlying thing here. Here we go. And now if I drag and drop this model into my world, right, here's what it looks like. Right, pretty good. Okay, now there's some problems. We're going to talk about this in a second. But let's, for now, if you notice my maze 2, here's my maze 2. As I scroll in to this thing, I'm going to rename this thing from maze 2 just to, we'll call this the maze tile. Maze tile. I use the underscore for now to show you, right? And if I go in here, right, here's my, my maze around. Let's see if we can see any issues. So far, so good. We're pretty good. Hey, look underneath. How come we can't see anything? Because these are culled. Back face culling, what we talked about before. If you notice, as I scroll underneath, I can't see the underneath my map because who cares? Anyway, right? And this is a much better rendering that I did for the first class. I did break it up a little bit. Let's do a couple things. Let's move my directional light up a little bit in my scene, so it's not in my scene, like on my. And let's add a. Let's first of all anchor this one. Let's add a couple of other things here. First of all, my Z should be 0. Well, that would be bad, right? Let me undo that. Ooh. Yeah. Let's do a couple of other things. What I meant to do is let us make an empty. So I'm going to kind of make a new empty object. There it is. Make sure it's its own. And let's make sure that that object is reset. So we're resetting that object. And let's take the maze tile and put it inside my empty game object for a second. There we go. And my game object, let's rename this game object. So we're going to call this thing maze tile. So maze tile. There we go. And I want to add a collider right, to my maze tile. That's not the actual object, but the actual model that I have that's underneath the object, right? I want to have a collider to this one, and I'm going to click Add Component, Physics. And now here's a question. Should I add a box collider, a sphere collider, a capsule collider? None of these work. The best one, of course, is Mesh Collider. But Mesh Collider is really expensive. So there's going to be some stuff we have to try and do to fix this. Okay, cool, cool. So this is my Mesh Collider. And then, so I've got that piece in there as well. And it looks pretty good. I don't my skybox. That's not cool. But of course, the way I look at that is through my camera. I don't have a camera on the scene right now because I've deleted it. Because what I've done is I've killed my player. Let's import some standard assets. So I'm going to go File, or Assets, I mean, Import Package. And I'm going to import my characters package. And I don't want everything here. I definitely don't want my, I want my first person controller, so I want that one. I don't want my roller ball, so get rid of that one. And I don't want my third person character right now. I want to get rid of that one. By the way, tomorrow I'll be talking about giving you guys assignment number 3 and your final project, where the assignment number 3 will have an option to do either an FPS, or sorry, first person perspective, FPP kind of game, or a you know, third person kind of game for assignment 3. Okay, that's one. And the second thing is, so I've kind of got these objects here. So I'm just unclicking the roller ball and third person character and pressing import. It's going to import them into the world. And if you notice, it puts them under something called a folder called standard assets that I'm going to rename, because I don't like that name. I'm going to rename this standard assets folder into another folder that I'm going to call imported assets, because I like that name better. Imported assets, and it's going to re-import them in a second. There we go. I have my character in there, so I'm going to go into imported assets, into characters, into first person character, down into prefabs, and I'm going to click my FPS controller prefab and bring it into my scene. There we go. And I'm going to rename this thing as player. So choose player. And I'm going to also tag it as a player. There we go. And let's just collapse all that stuff really quickly. Now that I have my player prefab, let's make this a little smaller. Let's frame select it. So we're way over here. We just like reset it to where it's supposed to be in the middle. And frame select it back in. Oh, there it is, inside a wall. That's not cool. Let's bring him outside the wall. So kind of in here, and we'll lift him up so he falls a little bit. There we go. There's my option. So I have in my player, I have my first person character. That's actually what it is a camera. And I want to change this to, I'll rename this to a player camera. That's what it is, right? Right now, what it's doing, my player camera, if you notice the preview right here, it's rendering a skybox, right? Which I don't want, at least not this skybox, right? So for now, let's make the background, let's change this background to, from skybox to solid color, right? And we're gonna make this solid color like close to black for now. All right, cool, so we got the solid color that's black. Let's play and see what I get, right? So, hey, okay, here we go. And if you notice as I walk, right, I can jump. So if I go jump, oh, okay, okay. And then we're going here. And if you notice, I can walk around and see my entire scene. Now this is a pretty small tile, even though it's 16 by 16 meters, it's pretty small. So what do I do to make it a little better? First of all, let's change our aspect to free aspect for now, just to make it so it's big. And what I'm also going to do is I want to maximize on play so you can see the whole thing a little bit better for you guys. I'm going to scroll out here, right? So I'm going to scroll out. This is where my character begins. But what I want to do is I want to make this maze tile right here, I want to make it into a prefab, right? So when I kind of take this maze tile, I kind of go into my prefabs folder and pull it in like this, right? So if I've done everything correctly, I should be able to do this. There's my maze tile. Well, now that I've got this as a prefab, I can pull it back into the scene by just drag and drop it back in, right? Okay, well, what's happened is I've got my maze tile on top of my maze tile, and you can't see. So what I want to do is I want to kind of grab this maze tile and move it to one direction over here. This is cool. Hold on. This is the neat part. And the thing is, I wanted to kind of connect with this piece exactly. How do I do that? Well, I got to click the V key, right, which is vertex select. I'm going to go right to the corner here. I'm going to kind of drag and drop this so it snaps. So it's going to be vertex snapping. Now this is what it looks like. It's kind of snapped to the top, right? That's not what I wanted. Undo. What I want to do, first of all, is change my X position to 0, right? And if you notice, as I'm pulling, I want to pull my X out again just for a second. And I want to change my view so that way I can do vertex select mode a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to kind of go out here. I've got my thing. I'm press the V key right to the vertex and then snap. Now it looks like this. Now this is the problem. Look, I'm closed here, right? So I can't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this thing by 90 degrees. So I'm going to go to, let's say, around the y-axis by 90 degrees, and then it looks like this. Take a look. Okay, cool. So that got my way of making more tiles. So I've got my main tile, which is right here, right? And I want to add some more tiles around it. So I'm going to grab this tile, and I'm going to Shift D or Command or Control D to duplicate. I'm going to pull this one across here like this, and I'm going to scroll out, vertex select mode V, grab this bottom vertex here and snap it in. Right now it's a little bit messed up, so I'm going to rotate it. And again, you'd be more strategic when you make your tiles. I made mine that have edges and enclosed corners. You wouldn't have to do that. So let's rotate this tile another one, so 180 degrees this time. So it's like an opening like this. You see now there's a bit of a maze, right? And we're going to do this. We're going to Shift or Command Control D for this one, Control D, and I'm going to grab this one and pull this over here. And again, I'm just going to move my view so you can see the tile a little bit nicer. I'm going to kind of go in there and let's pull this out a little bit so you can see the thing. I'm going to press V for vertex select mode right this corner into this one. Now you have to be very careful here because otherwise, like how I just did it, you're going to see that it's too high, right? So now let's make sure that you're not snapping to the wrong side, right? So here that's pretty good, right? And you know it's pretty tight in these corners here, so I'm probably going to want to rotate this by 90. Let's see, how about minus 90? And again, one of these rotations might be the right way. There we go. See how that looks. That's not bad. All right, so there you go. So they've kind of a brick of tile. Well, guess what I can do now? Now that I've got this one, right, I can select all these, right? So I'm going to bring this up here just to make it easier for me to select all these things, make my player up here. So I'm going to grab all these ones, right, all these tiles together, and I'm going to Command or Control D to duplicate them all. There they are. And now I'm going to pull these out over here, right, where I can expand my maze by pressing V for vertex select mode to the bottom corner and snap it in, snap to. So now I've got a much larger maze and no time. That's the way I'm going to do procedural maze generation, but I'm going to do it with code as opposed to me doing it like this. We have to be a little bit more strategic about how we make our tiles. I may have to give you one that works, and you can create your own maze, if you will, pretty quickly. Okay, so this is cool. Let's check it out. Let's try this out with the player and see what changes we can make before the day is done. So press play. All right, so there's my maze, and we'll run through it. It's pretty tight there. And again, there's some adjustments we could have made. Right, a lot better than I did the first class. But you can, as you can see, I'm at that end. Let's see if I can go through this. It's pretty good. And you can see that I can get thoroughly lost, and if I fall, I'm down into death. Okay, so that's how it goes. So that's pretty cool. It's a couple things too I don't like. I don't like the way my camera is showing the skybox or the blackness. I want to make my skybox a little differently. I didn't show this during the day, but I did change this online. So notice that there's a background right here. I've just changed my camera, my player camera, so it sees a black background. But I would like to see a different kind of skybox instead of blue skybox we're always used to seeing, right? So how do I change that? Well, let's go into materials. And inside materials, I'm going to pull this out here. I'm going to right click and create a new material, right? And right now I'm going to call this dark sky. That's what I want to kind of make, the dark sky material. And right now, if you notice, my standard shader is standard. I don't want that. I want to change this to skybox. There's different options for skybox. One, you can create a 6-sided skybox. You can make it a cube, so a big cube, or I can make it procedural, which is what I want. So I'm going to click procedural. And now if you notice, there is an example on the bottom of what it looks like, my skybox texture, but I want it to be kind of darker. So let's just choose a dark ground. So I'm going to try to choose this darker ground. And even a dark sky, so kind of a darker sky. So it kind of darkens up a little bit. Not too dark. And I'm also going to change my exposure down a little bit, so it kind of makes it a glow, but it's going to be pretty dark, right? And that's what it looks like. If I change my atmosphere thickness, it makes it so that it's thicker or a little bit thicker. I'm going to change to 1.16. So I've made a few changes, and that's my dark sky, right? Here's my dark sky skybox. Okay, cool. You might say, well, what the hell is that, Tom? Watch. If I go to window, if I go to under window, there's lighting. If I click lighting, I can choose under my lighting, my default skybox is no longer my default skybox. I can choose the little circle select right here on the right, and I can choose my dark sky as my sky, which changes everything around, right? There we go. And let's get rid of this. And now, if you notice, that's my new skybox. And if I took a look at my camera's using my, instead of my solid color, I don't want that, I want to use my skybox, which is now my default skybox. Now let's take a look and see how I look if I play. Now I got a kind of a spookier skybox going on, which makes more sense for my scene, right, than what I had before. And if you notice, it's a procedural skybox, so it's off in the distance, but it's kind of a darker, you know, look to it than the one I had before. Now I could use whatever skybox I want or have. I can make my own, but as you can tell, this is pretty good. And next day we get together, I'm going to add back my guns, right? And we're going to have some pretty good fun with this. If I go up here, I'm pretty good, I'm pretty strong though, which is kind of messed up, eh? So I can kind of jump on the top and cheat, right? You can see the whole maze, right? So I may want to change that, but it looks pretty good. Like if you look at actually how the texture and everything is, it's not bad for a 2-second job. Like, and this was truly, even though we took like 2 hours to do this, that's a 2-second job in terms of what we do. It's really fast. It's not professional by any means, but it's a good view on how we can create some simple textures to make your games a little bit more interesting. They're not perfect by any means, but you know, and now look at that. I can jump. Maybe what I want to do is I want to, you know, produce a roof, or maybe some of these, instead of it being simple as this, I could add to them by adding other pieces of the building, railings, different kinds of, we can decorate this thing, and we will. As we go on, I'm going to add more and more stuff to it, like things like tubes and all kinds of other stuff we're going to add to this thing to make this thing our own. And we're going to generate the pickups randomly along with a procedural generation, right, where it can appear. Once we know what our standard tile is going to be, I'm going to create some standard spawn points for pickups. But they're going to appear. We're going to pick one of those pickups as we generate the, you know, procedurally generate this stuff, so that it's going to be some random position where the pickup's going to be inside of our tile. It's not bad for what we've done. This is our beginning, and we're going to continue to set this up next time with some extra stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and produce, to give you some other assets to use, some guns, as opposed to making one. We'll just get a gun. We can do things in a couple ways. We can get them from Blender, because there's a lot of free assets out there. We can import into Blender with some kind of texture map and bring them in, or I can give you some stuff that you can use. So for now, I'm going to save the scene. I'm going to save the project, and I'm going to just get out of here on Unity. And for you guys to have what I have, so you can test it out for yourself, I'm going to git add dot, which adds everything, git commit -m, and I'll say added, basically added everything to the scene. Textures, models, and player to scene. There we go. And then git push origin file master. So you should have all that. Any questions around this stuff? Again, all we've done, that's pretty good. I mean, I pushed up like 5 megs just now, right? But all we've done today is kind of create this world. And again, this is one piece that we've got to make. If I go into assets, if you notice here, it kind of takes care of the models and the prefabs and the textures. They're all here for you guys, where you can go and grab them. They've already been made into normal maps. And think about a normal map as just a review. We've talked about textures and materials. Materials is the container. That you have shaders, you have how it reflects light, how it casts shadows, how it receives shadows, all that stuff. The texture is applied to the material, right? On top of the material, it has this textural look to it, an image. And then we can make the texture into a normal map. We can actually create it through Photoshop, or we can use Unity to do it like we just did, to create almost like this three-dimensional bump effect, bump map, if you will. So that's it for me for today. We'll get tomorrow. Tomorrow for section 1, we're going to talk about our new assignment 3 tomorrow, and final assignment for this course. We'll talk about those two things, and we'll continue with our first-person shooter demo.